And welcome back to the episode of There's Danger. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're going to have another different type of case for you. I think it's just going to be a little fun one.
I like the little fun ones.
Yeah, I like to sprinkle mine
Yeah,
against all the atrocities that we talk about.
I know.
All right. When you think about a lake, often it's to swim or fish in. There's a calmness to it and an unassuming stillness. There is safety in the finite size of a lake compared to the vastness of the ocean. Yet in Michigan, there lies bodies of water that rival the oceans. The Great Lakes can be just as dangerous, the waves enough to cause a graveyard of ships hiding at the bottom of their beds. Lake Superior, it is touted, never gives up her dead.
Oh,
So,
that's so spooky.
so we are going to be talking about a ship today.
That's cool.
Uh-huh. Today we're discussing a shipwreck. There are many shipwrecks spanning decades along the Great Lakes, but one that is famous enough to garner its own song was that of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and she sank November 10th, 1975, with 29 men on board.
Oh, wow.
hmm So, growing up in this area, this is a very famous ship. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Everybody, when their kids goes to the museum and sees like the pieces of it, we always talk about it. It's sinking and how like the gale force winds of November can be very dangerous. Not the only ship by far that's down at the bottom of the Great Lakes, but definitely one of our more famous ones.
The Great Lakes are like so incredible to see.
hmm And they're daunting, and I think people, you think a lake, I always think of something small, and these things are massive, and Superior is very, very deep and always cold,
Yeah.
always cold.
Oh, I imagine it's so cold.
It's funny though, because when you go to the beaches, the first, few inches you walk in, it's nice and warm, and everybody's like, oh, yay. And growing up there, you're like, oh, just wait, like walk out another 5 feet. You're gonna find the ice, I promise.
How cold is it in the middle of the summer? Like, can you swim in it?
You can, but there's areas that if you aren't conditioned to it, you're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can still have that. Like if you jump into Lake Superior, even in the summer, you can have that same reaction where your body tightens up when you hit an extreme cold.
Yeah.
hmm
Okay.
But we grew up different, I think, up there
Oh,
because
right.
even we always had, I remember this winter dance, and it was early enough in the winter season that usually the lake wasn't frozen all the way over. And we'd go in and jump in it like a polar plunge,
Oh my
but it was
God.
just like a bunch of high schoolers in dresses and shit just jumping
Oh,
in
that's so
the
much fun.
frozen water. Yeah.
Oh,
hmm
I imagine some parents hated that.
Yeah,
Like
I'm sure they
we
did.
just spent $300 on your stupid dress and
Yeah.
you jumped
Not
in the
every
lake.
not everybody did it.
Right.
There's a group of us.
Uh-huh.
And then oh yeah, even in high school, my sister and I used to have this thing where we'd bet for $1. It started when we were little and we never increased. There was no inflation for us. And one year we went over to the museum up by Whitefish Point, and there was still ice, like shards of ice on the beach. She's like, I bet you $1 you won't jump in.
Oh my God.
She lost. I won. I mean, we had towels in the car. It was fine. It's not like I hadn't done it hundreds of times before.
That's where like your calm demeanor comes from.
Jumping in the cold
Like
water.
that cold water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm All right, let's get back to the
Okay.
ship. I could talk for hours about
Yeah.
it. So, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was commissioned on June 7th, 1958, as an ore carrier. The christening was attended by 15,000 people, but it didn't go off seamlessly. It took 36 minutes for the shipyard crew to release the keel blocks, which delayed the release. Once released, however, it slid into the dock, creating a wave that soaked those in attendance and bounced off the opposite pier. The ruckus even caused an attendee to have a heart attack, and they passed away
Oh
on the way
my.
to the hospital.
Oh, that's a bad omen.
It reminds me of the Titanic. A lot of this does, where
Yeah.
like you see it go in the water, and it's not this smooth in the water like people think. It went in sideways and like bounced off the other side, caused this huge wave, and was
It's
it?
like you need to get the mechanics back out and make
Yeah,
sure there was no
yeah.
damage done also.
hmm
Also, before we go on, What is ore? I only know it from the settlers of Catan, and I actually thought it was sort of maybe made up.
No,
Okay.
you'll wait a minute. I'm
Okay.
actually going to explain all the pieces to that in a minute,
Okay. All right.
but we'll get to that in just a second, I
Okay.
promise. So finally, the president of the company that built the ship, Elizabeth Fitzgerald's, the company, the wife, excuse me, used a champagne bottle to christen the ship, which is pretty common in
Mhm.
this. And it is customary to hit the bottle against the bow to break it. However, it didn't break immediately.
Ugh,
Instead, Elizabeth had to hit the bottle against the bow 3 times before it finally broke. And many mariners considered this to be a bad luck sign
oh,
for the
that's
ship.
an awful,
Mm-hmm.
awful omen.
Yep. Everybody's like, oh, nope, nope, nope.
That's why they say don't let women sail on sea.
Uh-huh. I
They're
know.
bad
We're
luck.
bad omens. Oh, no. It was, at the time, it was built 729-foot long ship and weighed 13,632 tons, the
Wow.
largest to be built at the time, continuing to maintain that record until 1971. The ship cost $8 million to build and was owned in partnership by the Milwaukee-based Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and named after the company's current president at the time it was built and chairman of the board, Mr. Fitzgerald, whose family wasn't new to the seas. His father owned a ship repair company, and his grandfather was a ship's captain and the founder of the Wisconsin Marine Historical Society.
Hmm. Again, I feel like that's bad luck.
Why?
The people who are giving you money to build the ship are the same people who gamble on people living or dying.
The life insurance
Life
portion.
insurance
Come
company.
on. Okay. The ship was built to haul taconite, iron ore, from the mines in Duluth, Minnesota, to ironworks in various cities around the Great Lakes. Its port of registry was Milwaukee. And now let's talk about it. So, taconite are pellets made of iron ore that is heated and rolled into marble-sized balls. It's then transported, moved to mills, and there it is melted down and processed into steel.
Oh,
So it's metal.
okay.
See, I told you I had it all.
Good to
I
know.
had it all prepared because I was like, taconite? Like, what in the world is that when you get real specific? So when the ships are loaded, it's literally like marble-sized pellets is what it looks like.
It's
That you
heavy,
can,
I imagine.
yeah,
It
it
makes
is.
that already very heavy boat much heavier, or
Mm-hmm.
ship, I should say. It's not a
Oh, no.
boat.
Don't start. Every time we have to do something
I
that's
know.
controversial.
I know.
Once the commission, the Fitzgerald really set to work and set to outpace any other ship in the lake at the time. In 1964, she became the first ship to carry more than 1 million tons of ore through the Soo Locks.
1 million tons?
Hmm.
And not in one trip.
No, no, no.
Like, just,
Yeah,
okay. I was like,
yeah.
and where are these locks?
The Soo Locks are up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. It's the very top of Michigan. So if you look geographically at Michigan, I always laugh because we use our hands to show you what Michigan looks like.
Mhm.
The lower part of Michigan looks like a mitten, so everybody raises their hands. And
Okay.
if you're from the Midwest, you know we always point to our hands and tell you where we are.
Uh-huh.
Well, if you live in the Upper Peninsula, you have to put both hands out, so then it becomes a map. And nobody else can see this, but Sam can because I'm doing it for her. So this is Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula is the mitten. And then Sault Ste. Marie is the very tip of like your first finger.
Okay.
And then there's a bridge there that goes to Canada. But before the Soo Locks were built, there was a rapids there that everybody would have to traverse. We have a street there called Portage Street because that's where everybody took their boats or canoes or whatever, and they literally had to take them out of the water, go down this route that became known as Portage Street, and then back in the water on the other side of the rapids.
Oh, wow.
So ships couldn't get through, so
Right.
they built and there's Canadian and American locks. And I know that the last time I was home, the Canadian side was under construction because they were much smaller. There's only a couple that are pretty big.
And do they just connect the lakes? Like,
Hmm. Yeah. It's again an area of rapids. So Lake Superior is much deeper than Lake Huron, which is the one that it attaches to. Again, sorry, geography
no, I
lesson.
love
We'll
it.
talk about it.
I'm like digging it.
So because there's such a significant change, that's what caused the rapids, the depth of the lakes. And so the locks, it's pretty fun. I mean, you can view it if you're up in Sault Ste. Marie. if you're coming from the Superior side, you're going to be much taller, and you go into the locks and the water drops, and
Brings
then
you
you go out to the Huron side. Obviously, if you're coming the other way, it goes that way.
right.
Yeah. And my favorite part, I don't know why, but everybody gets to learn this fun fact now. So we always, when you're learning about the lakes, and, you know, kids are very pictorial and things like that. So Lake Superior looks like a wolf's head.
Oh,
Huron looks like they always used to call it like a trapper. Looks like like a guy with a backpack
uh-huh.
on. And Michigan looks like a squash. Yeah, it's like a squash.
To Leilani's high school teachers, bravo, you did a great job. I mean,
They taught me things.
I'm sure growing up there
Starting again.
helps too, but
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
definitely a testament to your
I
education
know,
there
I
in your
remembered all that.
local area.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yep.
You're welcome. Yeah. So, all right, let's get back to the story. So she also set a seasonal hauling record 6 different times. So in 6 different seasons, they were the ones that brought in the most iron ore through the to the mills. In September 1969, she did run aground near the Sioux Locks, and in the same year, she also set the heaviest haul record of 27,402 long tons of taconite ore.
Wow.
So there's several instances where you're like, oh my God, how did this thing not get so super damaged? Like when you run aground, like
I
how does
know.
that even happen? And then in 1979, she crashed into the SS Hochelga.
Uh-oh.
Again, it wasn't like major damage, both of the ships. I mean, they do check them and repair them. They'll pull them into,
Right.
I think, dry docks usually and make sure that there's nothing going on, and was fine. And later, she managed to hit the walls of the Sioux Locks 3 different times,
Oh my
which
gosh.
I could see like on rough days. I mean, even the locks aren't going to be perfect, and the size of the Fitzgerald, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room between the locks, so I'm sure that happens. I mean,
Does it?
mhm,
That seems so wild to me.
yeah,
That's
there's
crazy.
usually like, oh, what are they called? Oh, I'm not a mariner. Oh no, here we go. Like the little buoy things that they like go out that kind of
Right.
if
That
you
sort of like
yeah.
bumping. Yeah.
They remind me of tires. Some of
Right.
them look like tire. I'm like, is that just a tire? Is that what that is? I have no idea because I don't deal with ships because I get motion sickness on the water.
Oh, definitely. That's another
Mm.
reason why you weren't in the Navy.
It's not, yeah, definitely. Um, let's see what else. On the bright side, in 1972, she set a single haul record when she carried more than 30,000 tons of pellets of iron. And in 1972, 62-year-old Captain Ernest McSorley, a man with 44 years of experience, took charge of the ship. He had captained 9 other ships prior to the Fitzgerald, and in 1974, the ship lost its bow anchor in the Detroit River.
Oh my God.
So just all these little things where you're like, you're doing great. Oh, why'd you do that?
I
Like, you're doing
imagine
great. Oh,
that, like, being a ship captain, that job would be such a cush job. Like, you've done like the ocean liners or whatever. Like, I have a friend from Seattle. Her dad, he's retired now, but he was a ship captain and he would like do cargo ships across the entire world. And like, you have to worry about pirates and, all of these extra things that you don't think about
mhm.
regularly. But like, I feel like yes, there's gonna be a lot of things in general as a ship's captain that is tough, but, like, you get to retire, like, out on Michigan and be like, "I don't have to worry about all of the world dynamics here unless we get in a war with Canada."
No, you just have to worry about sinking.
Yeah, I guess you gotta worry about sinking.
Unless.
Yeah.
Also, notably, the U.S. Coast Guard had increased the load line 3 times in 1969, 1971, and 1973. So, by regulation, they kept changing how much that the ship could carry. And so the ship ended up being able to carry 4,000 tons more than it should. And the heavier cargo meant that it had less freeboard and buoyancy, which lowered how it sat in the water.
Mhm.
3 different times they
Mm.
did that. That's a thing. It's very dangerous thing to
Seems
do. It's
yes.
ominous, okay?
It's
We're getting there.
ominous, and it also just seems like it goes against the laws of science.
Like, why would you do it? Yeah.
Like
because they wanted to run. I mean, the more that you can fill the ship, the
Right.
less each run costs for them and the more profit they
Right.
get. I get it, but
Money versus science. Who cares?
who cares? On October 31st, 1975, a routine Coast Guard inspection was completed in Toledo, Ohio, in which damage was noted to the ship. And so the ship was scheduled for repair after the 1975 shipping season was over.
Hmm.
So what they found was that numerous hatch covers were not sealing properly in part of the ship, meaning that the area was no longer impervious to water. The water could seep in. In addition to this damage, it should be noted that the ship again sat lower in the water due to the weight of the cargo, meaning more of the waves would breach over the top, depending on the size of them.
How big can the waves get in these lakes? Like, do you know the size of swells? Like the largest swell ever reported?
I do not know the largest swell, but we will talk about, I think, the size here, and I think they get like 18 feet or something like that.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, again, when we talk about like, everybody thinks it's oceans and that, like these
Right.
little lakes aren't going to produce, but they do.
Right.
These ones do because it's very vast, the space that
Oh,
the
yeah.
winds and
I remember going to like Cedar Point at one point in my lifetime. And then in that same trip, standing on the edge of the lake there and thinking, like, this is the ocean.
Mhm.
It just was the ocean, the way
Yeah,
the waves were whipping around. And like, it was really very cool.
yeah, just fresh water, not sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. On November 8th, 1975, a storm was brewing in the plains and proceeded north towards the Great Lakes, but it didn't appear to be worth anything at the time, so it was just kind of considered a normal November storm. Pretty typical for the Great Lakes. And now before we get into specifics of events, let's discuss a bit about how the size of the waves are predicted and determined.
Oh,
Listen, I tried
it's
for you
almost
because
like
I
we
knew you were gonna.
rehearsed this today.
We did.
We did not.
We did not. But I knew that you asked these questions, and so I'm like, all right, I need to find these
We're
answers.
fine
Sam's
tuning
gonna.
our craft here.
So the size of the wave depends on the wind speed, and here it's both like the strength and steadiness of the wind. So it can be a strong wind, but if it's just blowing intermittently, it changes how much strength it has behind it overall. So the more the wind is steady and strong, the larger the wave.
Right.
The duration of the winds, so the longer the wind is active, again, the larger the waves. And then there's something called the fetch, which I had no idea what this was, but that is the distance of open water over which the air can move. So the
Mm.
bigger the body of water,
Hmm.
the more it can move. And once again, if it's larger, there's more air that moves over the surface, creating again these larger waves. So
Right.
you need a combination of all these to kind of get going.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the events. On November 9th, the Edmund Fitzgerald departed from Superior, Wisconsin, so the west end,
Okay.
and it's headed east towards the locks. So it has to traverse the whole Lake Superior
Mm.
from west to east, with approximately 26,000 tons of ore bound for Detroit, Michigan. That was its eventual mill that it was going to. And throughout the trip, there were two ships actually, the Fitzgerald and the Arthur M. Anderson, that were sailing kind of together. The Anderson trailed it the whole time, but they were in constant communication with each other. Again, like I said, the Anderson trailed the Fitzgerald during their journey. In the evening of the 9th, the National Weather Service, or the NWS, issued a gale warning for Lake Superior. And in a gale, wind speeds range from 34 to about 40 knots. Please don't ask me what a knot is. I know that there's an actual overall name and how fast it's going, but it's a knot, okay?
Yeah, I know I personally have a general gist of it, like
Yeah,
gale force winds, because
yeah.
I'm an avid hurricane
Oh,
watcher. So
the NWS predicted east to northeasterly winds during the night, and they shifted northwest to north by the afternoon of the 10th. At 10:40 p.m., the NWS altered its forecast for eastern Lake Superior to easterly winds becoming southeasterly, and it's just changing, how much it's going over the lake,
right,
where they're coming from. At 2 a.m., November 10th, the NWS upgraded the gale warning to a storm warning, meaning the winds were going to increase from 34 to 40, to winds of 48 to 55 knots. So we are definitely getting bigger.
Right.
A lot bigger. After the upgrade, the NWS, the captain of the Anderson actually called to Captain Cooper. So that's Captain Cooper, and he called into the Fitzgerald and discussed the change in weather predictions. And they kind of discussed like how they were gonna, like where they were gonna go from there. If they were gonna sit in port and wait it out, if they were gonna continue moving, and then what like how they would move on Lake Superior. And so both of them had decided that what they were going to do is they were going to basically follow Lake Superior north. So like almost on the Canadian border. I think at one point they were in Canadian waters, in order to keep the land, like to protect it from the way that the winds were coming, so that they would be smaller on the north
Right.
end.
Right.
I'm like pointing. Nobody else can see it but Sam. She has to deal with my hand motions.
Everyone just needs to close their eyes and envision.
Envision what I'm saying,
Yeah.
guys. Okay, I promise I'm trying to make sense. And so they stayed out the middle of the lake. Again, like I said, it was meant to keep them safer. An hour later at 3 a.m., the winds were reported as coming from the northeast at 42 knots. And again, at this time, both ships continued on. Captain Cooper, so again, the Anderson, reported that at this time he watched the Edmund Fitzgerald pass far too close to 6 Fathom Shoal to the north of Caribou Island. So there's like this little tiny island in Lake Superior that kind of looks like the eye of the wolf.
Oh, there you go.
See? And he could clearly see the ship and the beacon on the Caribou Island, and on his radar set could measure kind of the distance between the two. And so to him, it looked like he like hit the ground.
Oh.
He and his officers watched the Fitzgerald pass right over the dangerous area of the shallow waters. And so, of course, they're concerned, but nothing at this time came from the Fitzgerald. By this time, snow and rising spray had obscured the actual Fitzgerald from sight. And so they were like 17 miles behind the Fitzgerald at this time, but they could catch them on radar after this. At 7 a.m., the storm moved over Marquette to the north onto the lake. So Marquette's just a city in Michigan, if you know it. And it's hard without being able to show you what my hand looks like. So, like, again, there's like the wolf and there's like the little mouth, and there's a part that sticks out from the Upper Peninsula, and it's just east of that. It would be where the city is.
So it's sort of like where the ear meets the head.
Well, it wouldn't be that far.
Oh, okay.
No, it would be like under the jawline.
Oh, okay.
You're way off.
It's very off.
It's not up here. It's down there.
Okay.
And then at 2:45, the winds were registering at approximately 42 knots. Again, the winds had shifted northeast to northwest, increasing the fetch at this with goodness gracious. At which point, both ships lost the safety of land that they had hoped that they were going to have traveling north. The Anderson reported as such.
If anything, it now makes it worse, right? You've just...
Yeah, so like because they lost that safety net that they
Right.
thought they were going to have when the winds shifted.
Right.
Because now the wind is traveling
Across all of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was I? See, we start talking and then I lose where I'm going. Okay. Anderson reported it. The winds had a speed at approximately, or it was producing waves of approximately 12 to 16 feet at this time. And according to the Shipwreck Museum, quote, at 3:30 p.m. that afternoon, Captain McSorley radioed Captain Cooper and said, "Anderson, this is Fitzgerald. I have a fence, rail down, 2 vents lost or damaged, and a list. I'm checking down. Will you stay with me till I get to Whitefish?" End quote. And so that means that they were slowing down because they were having some issues, and he wanted the Anderson to kind of stay with him while they like continued to travel together for safety reasons. And McSorley was checking down his speed to allow the Anderson to close the distance as well. Because again, like I said, he had gotten like 17 miles behind him. So he was like trying to close that gap. And Captain Cooper asked McSorley if he had his pumps going. And McSorley, again, this is the Fitzgerald, said yes, both of them. which means they were trying to pump out water that's coming into the
Right.
ship. So they had definitely had some extra water coming in. As the afternoon wore on, radio communications with the Fitzgerald concerned navigational information who could hear it, but no extraordinarily alarming reports were offered by Captain McSorley. So again, it's not just the two ships that can talk to each other, like other services can hear kind of what's going on in the area. At about 5:20 p.m., the crest of a wave smashed the Anderson's starboard lifeboat, making it unusable.
Oh, that's not good.
And again, they're behind the Fitzgerald. Captain Cooper reported winds from the northwest to west at a steady 58 knots with gusts up to 70 knots and seas of 18 to 25 feet. So the waves are reaching 25 feet according to what he can see.
Holy cow.
I know, that's frightening to me. According to Captain Cooper, about 6:55 p.m., he and the men in the Anderson's pilot house felt a bump, and then felt the ship lurch, and then turned to see a wave had engulfed their entire vessel from the side. The wave worked its way along the deck, crashing to the back of the pilot house and driving the bow of the Anderson down, which is like you
Not
see
a good
movies of
thing.
that and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
nope, thanks, nope,
Yeah.
nope. Again, this is the Anderson, not the Fitzgerald.
Right.
In the afternoon, Fitzgerald also made radio contact with another ship, the Avafor, and reported once again that they had, quote, had a bad list, had lost both radars, and was taking heavy seas over the deck in one of the worst seas he had ever been in, end quote. And so the Avafor, I believe, I was trying to look it up and I was having a hard time. I know that there was a ship coming from the east up to the west, and I think that was the Avafor. So it was coming the opposite direction of the Fitzgerald and Anderson. At approximately 7:10 p.m., Anderson made radio contact with the Fitzgerald, and it turned out to be their final contact, to check in asking how they were faring. And after reporting their list, the Fitzgerald replied, quote, "We are holding our own," end quote.
I mean, it's pretty intense that this captain of the Fitzgerald, who had 44 years of experience, is saying it's one of the worst seas he's ever been on.
Yes. But he does say that he thought that they were holding, that they were,
Right.
like, that the pumps were working and that they were going to make it through.
Right.
So they did not send out like a distress signal or anything. Shortly afterwards, the Fitzgerald simply disappeared from the Anderson's radar screen, even though it was only 10 to 15 miles ahead of the Anderson.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like, if you look at kind of the videos about this, it was there and then it was gone.
Crazy.
While there are speculations as to exactly what happened, what we do know, again, is that the hatch covers weren't able to create a seal, that the ship was getting battered by a storm and taking on water, which created a list. So the list, like he was like, one side was down further than the other side of the ship. Not front to back, but side to side. Likely a result from water moving in the hatchway to the hold. Listen, I have to tell you, because I feel like you'd be like, does that mean the front of the ship is?
No, okay. So whenever you said that they were talking about their list to each other, I thought you were referring to like they had this like list of things that was like adding up, like the fence or the railing fell off or X, Y, and Z. So their list was like getting bigger and bigger.
No. It was leaning to the side.
Okay.
There was a lean to it.
That's some mariner speak right there.
Sorry, I should have.
That's all right.
I mean, I got to explaining it now.
Yeah.
It just took a minute.
That's why I actually am amused by the way I envisioned it. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Dead wrong.
Yep.
I thought about it completely incorrect.
Yep.
I like that for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I should have told you ahead of time. The list was not.
It's all right.
A
Now,
checkoff sheet.
Another thing I can say I learned today. That's great.
Oh, no. So, again, this list is likely a result from the water moving in the hatchways to the hold But however, due to the ore in the ship, it wouldn't have been noticeable flooding until the water came above the
The
level of the
level of the
ore. Like you
ore.
wouldn't have been able to
Right.
see it in there. It is therefore believed that the Fitzgerald was slowly sinking due to the water load
Oh
that was
my God.
increasing until in the storm it went under one of the waves and didn't recover. So a wave
It
went over
just
top of it and
dove under.
a lot of people think that it did a sharp nosedive because the ship broke in half.
Oh,
hmm Um, let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah, causing it to sink within seconds. The theory holds as there's no distress signal given out. I mean, he didn't even hit the panic button.
right.
The lifeboats were never pulled from their location or used, and the Anderson again lost the ship within seconds and it trailed the Fitzgerald. And essentially, while they were looking for it, they
It was gone.
went right over top of it looking for the Fitzgerald, and it was already at the bottom of
Oh, yeah.
Lake
It
Superior.
was a
hmm
anchor.
hmm Immediate so like I said, it was split, and so the mid part of the ship tore apart and the stern rolled, so part of the ship rolled over and then laid atop where the middle of the ship
Wow.
should have been.
Whoa.
Yeah. According to I like this, Awesome Mitten. Quote, at around 10:30 p.m. or shortly after, the Coast Guard asked all anchored commercial vessels nearby for assistance, but only the SS William Clay Ford was able to respond. The agency also sent HU-16 fixed-wing search aircraft from Traverse City, which arrived at about 10:30 p.m. By 1 a.m. on November 11th, the HH-52 helicopter oh my goodness, hang on one second. Arrived with high-powered searchlight. Additionally, the Coast Guard sent the Wood Rush buoy tender, but it was anchored in Duluth and it took a day to get there, end quote. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that this is happening in the middle of the night also.
7:10 p.m.
Right. But they're like
I
the
know the search
planes don't
is
go
ended,
out
right?
until late. So like these people had no even opportunity to grab like a glow stick or whatever, like or flare or
hmm
whatever it is that you would normally grab as your ship is going down.
Yeah, I think it went down fast enough that wouldn't have happened
You wouldn't
anyway.
have any time to do that. So now it's the middle of the night and there's a snowstorm, it sounds like, with wind.
It's I don't think it was actually considered a snowstorm on
Okay.
the lake. It was just
Just
a windstorm.
incredibly windy. Yeah. So there's like no chance.
Yeah. After the sinking, the Coast Guard conducted searches for days in attempt to find the ship and crew members. The only thing found immediately was some wrecked lifeboats and other debris found 4 days later by the Navy vessel, the Lockheed P-3 Orion. And so the wreckage that was found, it was some of the lifeboats, but they don't think that the lifeboats were used. They think it was just torn off as the ship
Right.
was
It's
sinking.
the only thing that could float on that boat.
hmm Yes. Then on November 14th, the H Navy plane equipped with a magnetic anomaly detector located contact 17 miles northwest of Whitefish Point, which is a big area where there's a museum now, and they have a lighthouse there. And
hmm
the Coast Guard brought out a cutter, the Wood Rush, which located the wreckage sitting in, again, two pieces under 535 feet of water.
Mm,
That's a lot of water.
that's a lot of water.
No, thank you. Then on May 20th, 1976, a Navy underwater recovery vehicle, the Curve 3, was sent down with pictography capabilities. And after 43,000 feet of videotape and 900 photographs, the results confirmed the ship to be the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Wow.
Yeah. The Shipwreck Museum also reported that, quote, on April 15th, 1977, the U.S. Coast Guard released its official report of subject SS Edmund Fitzgerald, official number 277437, sinking in Lake Superior on November 10th, 1975, with loss of life, end quote.
Did they ever find anyone's bodies?
We'll talk about it in a second.
Okay.
Well, the Coast Guard said the sinking could not be conclusively determined. It maintained that the most probable cause of the sinking was the loss of buoyancy and stability resulting from massive flooding of the cargo hold. The flooding of the cargo hold took place through ineffective hatch closers as boarding seas rolled along its deck.
Yep.
No, thank you. However, the Lake Carriers Association vigorously disagreed with the Coast Guard's suggestion
Oh.
that the lack of attention to properly closing hatch covers was responsible. They, in turn, issued a letter to the National Transportation Safety Board in September of 1977, and they were inclined to accept that the Fitzgerald passed over the 6-fathom shoal area. So, like we had talked about originally, they think that they were taking on water because they had run aground in that area, as maintained by Captain Cooper, from the Anderson, who believed that they saw it hit. Late,
Who made that statement? That last one?
the Lake Carriers Association, and I don't know what part they have to play.
Right.
Like,
In like inspections,
yeah.
and that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'm like,
Yeah.
they're covering their own asses right
I
now
don't think
because
so.
they should have made that boat get their hatches fixed
Yeah.
before that season.
I don't think that they had anything to do with the ship, and I think they're just like an external organization, and they're like, I I I think that maybe their thought was the hatches, even with the water going
It
over
wouldn't
top of
have
it,
done
it
that.
shouldn't have filled that fast.
Right.
So they would think that it
Just-
had to come from underneath
Yeah.
to be a faster. I mean, it wasn't a fast sink, but a faster quote unquote sinking. Later in a videotape conversation, Captain Cooper said that he always believed McSorley knew something was serious, or something serious had happened to the Fitzgerald as the ship passed over the shoal. And he believes from that point on, McSorley knew he was sinking, which is why he had the pumps on. Conflicting theories about the cause of the tragedy remain active today. There have been 3 expeditions to the shipwreck, revealing that she had likely, quote unquote, submarined the bow first into the enormous sea. So again, it was like a really quick dip into the water, and it just couldn't recover from that. And they said that is the damage forward, like so the front of the ship shows that it like basically just did a nosedive straight down, and the whole front of the ship was
just smushed.
Yeah. But what caused the ship to take on water enough to lose buoyancy and dive to the bottom so quickly without even the distress signal, nobody knows.
You would think that, I mean, there's got to be so much damage involved, but you would think that like scientists who are experts in wreckage would be able to go down and like see potentially damage from like a ship that ran aground, or
I feel like that would be really hard because there's so many external factors. Like, so we know that pieces were broken. We also know that the ship broke in half and then at one point kind of drove over itself. So what damage is called from the initial wreckage? What would have been like if it did run aground and that damage occurred? How would you tell compared to the other damage that had happened?
Yeah.
Because it's not like part of it had, rusted or something that would have showed like an age difference, because it was the same event, right? Just at different times. So I don't know. I think it would be too hard to tell, which is why I think we have the conflicting theories about how it all happened. Now, what we do know is that 29 men died when the Fitzgerald sank. However, there is a line in Gordon Lightfoot's song that says, Lake Superior, it said, never gives up her dead, and I want to address this.
Okay.
Again, you and I, same wavelength today. It is true that all men died, but in the days after, several of them did wash up on shore, even at Whitefish Point. Most people kind of gloss over the fact that happens. Let's see. So the reason that people say Lake Superior never gives up her dead is not necessarily because we don't recover any bodies. It's because Lake Superior is so cold that when those are lost and they sink, Lake Superior is not conducive to decomposition.
Oh.
So it's cold enough that
Whoa.
Hmm. I remember growing up talking, like people talk about diving on a ship, and I'm like, cool. What if you come across a dead body? Like that is
Yeah.
frightening to me
Yeah.
more than the ship itself. But that's why the song says that they never give up their
That's,
dead. It's not because
I've
they
never,
don't wash up. It's because they don't decompose if they stay down there.
I've never really thought about that.
Yeah. Too cold.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can't remember. I feel like the people that were washed up, I think they were reinterned into this Edmund Fitzgerald later
Yeah.
on, but I don't know 100% if they all were. But I believe that was kind of the big thing as they set them back with their crew.
Yeah. I'm sure that was family
Yeah.
driven
Yeah.
at that point.
That part's very much not talked about.
Yeah.
So I don't know for sure.
Is there any like local legends that they still haunt the lake or anything like that?
Not
Or,
specifically them. I
right.
mean, Whitefish Point itself is considered to be very haunted, but
Yeah.
not specifically the Fitzgerald, just sailors.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In 1994, a diver, Fred Shannon, went down to the Fitzgerald and noted that only 33% of the ship was actually on the U.S. side of the waters. The rest are actually on the Canadian side. So, fun fact.
Oh.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's
Did
how far.
Canada help in the rescue? Probably
I
not.
don't think so. I mean, they might have. I don't think
Right.
that they would be like, no, we're not going out.
Right.
But I think we called the U.S. because
Right.
so there's in Sault Ste. Marie, there's a Coast Guard base. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that they were the ones called out. Also on July 4th, 1995, the original 200-pound bronze bell from the bow of the Edmund Fitzgerald was brought up out of the water,
Oh, that's
restored,
cool.
and placed in the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point. A new bell was brought down to the ship and put on the bow, and it has all of the crew members' names engraved on it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of history there. Okay.
I like love the respect for the profession
Hmm.
there. Like it's not just like let's bring this up and put it in a museum. They're like no, we need to keep their ship intact and
Hmm.
like honor them, and we're gonna rebuild it, give them their bell back down
Hmm.
there, which is really cool.
And every November 10th, the original bell is rung 29 times in memory of each
Oh,
crew member that was lost.
okay, well, heartfelt story now at
Yes. Hmm.
this part.
Following the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, safety changes have been implemented, including removing the freeboard reduction amendment. So that was that one where they could take on
Just
more and it
more,
lowered them into the
right.
water even more. So hauling weight could not be changed. Other changes included equipping heavy vessels with depth finders, installing GPS, putting survival suits in all of the crew's quarters and workstations, and using more detailed and precise navigational charts after determining that Fitzgerald had incorrect maps, which lend
Mm,
credibility to Anderson saying that he saw her run aground
right, that
prior to sinking.
definitely.
And the suits are because of the cold.
Yeah, okay.
As a personal note, growing up in the Great Lakes, I think every school child heard about this tragedy again. We went to the museum and saw the bell and bits of wreckage. She was likened to the Titanic and its ominous beginnings, and we sang the song of Gordon Lightfoot more than I can tell
Are you
anybody.
gonna sing it now for us?
Nope, 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 not getting sued for that. And I thought it would be an interesting story to tell others, and I also encourage everyone to go listen to the song of the Edmund
Yeah,
Fitzgerald.
I
It is really good.
definitely will.
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that different type of tale.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.